Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 15th of January. I'm Mark Broom at ARIRANG's News Centre in Seoul. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines at this hour. President Park Geun-hye embarks on a 9-day trip to India and Switzerland today, where she will seek investments in Korea and closer ties in IT and other high-tech areas. Tokyo confirms its push to include claims to Korea's Dokdo islets in school textbooks. Seoul demands an immediate stop to the expected revisions and criticizes the Abe administration for further damaging the two countries' relations. Plus, at least 11 people are dead after supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi clash with security forces on the first day Egyptians vote on a new constitution. President Park Geun-hye continues her sales diplomacy drive on this Wednesday as she embarks on a 9-day trip to India and Switzerland. Our presidential correspondent Oh Jin-ju, who will be travelling with the president, explains why these state visits come at a pivotal time for Korea.
President Park will focus on promoting her vision for a creative economy and securing greater foreign investment in Korea during her trip to India and Switzerland. In India, President Park will hold bilateral talks with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and discuss ways to further develop the two countries' cooperation in various fields, ranging from economic affairs to science and information communications technology. India is the world's second-largest market with a population of 1.2 billion and is currently moving ahead with a 5-year economic development plan that runs through 2017. The presidential office of Changwon says there is great potential in many areas for cooperation between Korea and India will be a key partner in helping Korea realize a creative economy, one of the Park administration's major goals.
India is globally competitive in high-tech industries such as IT and aerospace. Korea will sign MOUs with India in the fields of science, information and communications technology and aerospace during the president's visit to strengthen cooperation, especially in sectors related to the creative economy.
The president will also seek ways to upgrade the Korea-India Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which took effect in 2010, and urge the Indian government to support Korean companies, including POSCO, which has been working on a project in the Indian state of Odisha for 8 years now. President Park will be the first Korean leader to make a state visit to Switzerland. There she will hold a bilateral summit with President of the Swiss Confederation, Didier Burkhalter, and visit economic sites to benchmark Switzerland's vocational training system and its economic system, which is centered around small and mid-sized firms, all of which could be linked to her vision for a creative economy. The president will wrap up her trip at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where she will meet with the CEOs of global companies such as Cisco and Siemens and urge foreign businesses to invest in Korea. Oh Jin-ju, ARIRANG News.
On the heels of the New Year's press conferences by the president and the opposition party leader, the ruling party chief held one of his own on Tuesday. Our Kim Yeon-ji reports on his pledges to speed up the restructuring of indebted public sector and to improve the human rights situation in North Korea.
Ruling party chief Hwang Woo-yeol called for a rigorous reform of public sector corporations in his New Year's press conference Tuesday, saying many of them are poorly managed and weighed down with debt.
My party will set up a committee for economic reform, which will have 2 subcommittees, each tasked with reforming public corporations and regulations.
He also pledged to boost domestic demand and foster the service sector. Regarding healthcare policy, Hwang said the party wants to enable hospitals to form for-profit subsidiaries. He denied that doing so would privatize the health sector.
The healthcare policy my party and the government are pushing for would keep the public healthcare system centered around the National Health Insurance Service, while allowing hospitals to set up for-profit subsidiaries, such as hotels, restaurants, and funeral halls. This will allow hospitals to increase their profits and improve management. Again, this is not a privatization of medical services, nor does it have anything to do with a spike in medical fees.
In line with President Park's emphasis on reunification, Hwang said his party will start laying the groundwork for reunification, including the passage of a North Korea human rights bill. The existing North Korea human rights bill, first introduced by the Saenuri Party in 2005, stipulates that the South Korean government make rigorous efforts to protect the human rights of the North Korean people, currently a population of roughly 24 million. But the bill has been stuck in Parliament for years due to bipartisan differences over the content. The Democratic Party chief said on Monday that his party will soon draft a bill aimed at improving the human rights and livelihoods of North Koreans. The ruling party chief stressed that his party's #1 priority is to reduce social conflict and achieve national unity, saying that those things are key for achieving reunification and bringing the country a per capita income of $40,000. He also pledged to normalize parliamentary politics and strengthen relations with the opposition party. Kim Hyun-ji, ARIRANG News.
Although reunification on the Korean peninsula would almost certainly come at a very heavy financial price, experts say the economic benefits of reunification could be even greater. They say a unified Korea would become a significant geopolitical hub. Now, Kim Ji-yeon shows us what it might look like.
Experts in Seoul say the reunification of the two Koreas would help the region reach its potential as an important economic center. The Korea Research Institute for Human Settlements says the roads and railways connecting North and South Korea could lead to a reduction in the cost and time required to deliver goods, bringing about a new era for the distribution and transport of goods and services. The institute envisions railways and roads being constructed on 2 axial lines, one along the west coast that includes stops in the North Korean cities of Kaesong, Pyongyang, and Siniju, and the other stretching through the eastern part of the peninsula through Mount Kumgang, Wonsan, Hamhung, and Najin. If the Gyeonggi Railway line that used to run from Seoul to Pyongyang and all the way through Siniju were reopened, it could also connect with the Trans-China Railway to Beijing. And from Beijing, the railroad could join up with the Trans-Mongolian Railway through Ulaanbaatar and by extension the Trans-Siberian Line. This is why some call this transcontinental connection the next Silk Road, as it would connect Northeast Asia to Europe. It is estimated to take a total of 4 hours to get to Beijing from Seoul by train. Alexander Medvedev, Director General of Gazprom, one of the largest oil and gas supplier based in Russia, said his company would like to provide energy to the Korean peninsula and provide investment to kick things off. In an exclusive interview with the Chosun Daily, Medvedev said building the pipelines on land would lower maintenance costs and capital compared to transporting liquefied natural gas by sea. But Medvedev says there are plenty of potential pitfalls to account for. He cited a lack of a systematic record-keeping of transactions as one, and the absence of a qualified administrator to look over disputes that may arise from engaging in such business activities. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
While Japan's current Shinzo Abe administration continues to take a right-wing nationalistic stance over various historical and territorial issues, former Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono says Tokyo should inherit the contents and value of a special statement he made back in 1993. His statement, dubbed the Kono Statement, acknowledges the Japanese military's responsibility for forcing women in colonialized countries into wartime sexual slavery. And Kono, during a meeting with Korea's ambassador to Japan on Tuesday, stressed his statement was and is authoritative, adding he still firmly believes in the attitude and judgment of the administration at that time. The former chief secretary reportedly expressed regret over the strained relations between Korea and Japan and said he would do his part in trying to mend the country's ties. And we now move to yet another move by Japan to exacerbate the already soured ties with Korea. Tokyo officially confirmed plans to revise teaching guidelines for middle and high school textbooks to beef up its claims over Korea's doctor islets. Hwang Sang-hee has the details of that and a response from the Korean government.
During a press conference on Tuesday, Japanese Education Minister Hakubun Shimomura said Tokyo will revise its teaching manuals for middle and high schools, since it's important for students to have a correct sense of Japanese territory. The minister did not elaborate on the details of the revision, but according to Japanese media, the new teaching guidelines will claim that Dokdo is illegally occupied by Korea. These manuals are often used as reference materials to certify textbooks, which means more Japanese textbooks could state incorrect territorial facts down the road. Seoul's foreign ministry slammed the move, saying Japan must drop its unjustified claims at once.
Japan must immediately withdraw these unjustified claims. Let me reiterate that doing this would lay the path for friendlier ties between Korea and Japan.
Dokdo has long been a thorn in Seoul-Tokyo relations, with Japan continuously laying claim to the islets in school textbooks and government reports. In its latest effort to counter Japan's territorial claims over Dokdo, the Korean government released an online video clip on New Year's Day promoting its sovereignty and said that this clip will soon be available in English and also in Japanese. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
2014 marks 100 years since the start of the First World War. And to commemorate the occasion, renowned Korean cartoonists will exhibit works depicting the horrors faced by women forced into wartime sexual slavery by the Japanese military. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won reports on how the installation hopes to shed light on the tragic aftermath of the war.
The Korea Manhwa Contents Agency, together with the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, will present about 20 illustrations, cartoons, and graphic novels that center on the theme of Korean victims of sexual slavery during Japanese colonial rule at this year's Angoulême International Comics Festival in France.
Marking the 100th anniversary of the outbreak of the First World War, this year's Angoulême Festival exhibits many works depicting war crimes and violence against women. We hope this special exhibition draws international attention to the issue.
A 90-year-old Korean victim of sexual slavery who was taken to Japanese military brothels at the age of 14 participated in the press conference. She said she's still hurt that the Japanese government continues to deny its past crimes against humanity.
We have urged the Japanese government to apologize each and every week for more than 20 years in front of the Japanese embassy. However, all we hear are the insensitive remarks by Japanese politicians, so you can imagine how that makes us feel.
More than 20 works by 19 Korean artists, including renowned graphic novelist Lee Hyun-se, will be on display at the 4-day festival that starts later this month in France.
I try to sympathize how the victims would have felt during the atrocity and imagine how they overcame their difficulties and survived the tragedy.
Out of an estimated 100,000 or so Korean victims of sexual slavery during Japanese colonial rule, only 51 known victims are alive today. Organizers and participating artists hope the special exhibition will help to bring global attention to the pressing issue through the accessible and friendly medium of comics. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Deadly clashes have marred the first day of a 2-day vote in Egypt over the country's new constitution. At least 11 people were killed Tuesday as supporters of deposed President Mohamed Morsi clashed with security forces. Kwon So-ah reports.
A bomb exploded in Cairo Tuesday, just before polling stations opened for the national vote on a new constitution. No one was hurt, but at least 11 people were killed in other incidents connected to the referendum, despite tightened security for the vote. At least 5 deaths resulted from clashes between security forces and supporters of former President Mohamed Morsi, who was ousted by the military last year. The military-backed interim government wants the new charter to replace the constitution passed while Morsi was in power. It hopes to win strong backing in order to validate its removal of the country's first democratically elected president. So how would life in Egypt change under the new constitution? Under the new charter, equality between men and women and freedom of belief will be guaranteed. Parties will not be permitted to be formed on the basis of religion, race, gender, or geography, and the president can be impeached by parliament.
I came out because this constitution is the best constitution we have had and was done by professionals. First of all, it respects human rights and freedom of religion. It's a civil constitution for a civil advanced state, and this is what we were wishing for.
Morsi supporters are boycotting the vote.
We can never participate and give legitimacy to a regime which fools the people and tries to act like it is a civil democratic regime. It is neither democratic nor civil.
The referendum is expected to receive mostly yes votes, but analysts say the turnout is important too. Less than 33% of the population voted for last year's charter. This vote is the third in 3 years, and nearly 53 million people are eligible to cast their ballot. A positive result could also pave the way for fresh presidential elections. The chief of Egypt's army, General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who led the ouster of Morsi, has emerged as a strong candidate. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Israel's defense minister has apologized for calling U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry obsessive and messianic and saying he hopes Kerry wins the Nobel Prize so he leaves Israel alone. Moshe Alon's closed-door remarks, which were published on the front page of an Israeli newspaper, drew rare condemnation from the U.S. The State Department said the remarks were offensive and inappropriate, especially given all the help the U.S. provides to Israel. After a public rebuke by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Alon said Israel and the US share a common goal to advance the Middle East peace talks led by Secretary Kerry. Kerry has been back and forth to the region to persuade Israel and the Palestinians to agree on an outline proposal addressing the core issues of their conflict. On the second day of mass anti-government demonstrations in central Bangkok Tuesday, protest leaders threatened to detain Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra and other government officials if they don't step down by the end of the week. Protest leaders issued the ultimatum and said the opposition would intensify the shutdown by attacking ministries as well as the stock exchange if protesters' demands are not met within the next 2 or 3 days. What is being dubbed the Bangkok shutdown is the latest in a series of protests designed to topple the Shinawatra family. Both Yingluck and her exiled brother Thaksin are accused of running Thailand for their own personal benefit. Ex-Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra was ousted in a military coup in 2006. Now, he just wanted to talk about his plans to boost his country's ailing economy, but as French President François Hollande faced the press Tuesday, all anyone seemed to care about was his tangled love life. In his first news conference since allegations emerged about his affair, Hollande refused to answer any questions about it, saying it was neither the time nor the place to discuss such matters. However, he refused to say who his First Lady actually is, only saying he would clarify the matter before a trip to the United States in February. His main partner, Valérie Clivière, remains in hospital, where she has been since claims about his affair with an actress emerged in a gossip magazine last week. Her aides say she's being treated for shock. A new street address system is now in effect across Korea. The new format uses road names and building numbers instead of the city block number. The new system is supposed to make life easier, but lots of people are struggling to adjust, as our Connie Lee reports.
For small businesses, like this one fried chicken delivery franchise, the new road names are quite an inconvenience.
선생님 혹시 구주소는 혹시 모르세요? 번지수? 저희가 번지수복을 찾아가거든요. 아파트 아닌가 하면.
It's been so inconvenient for us. We know the delivery areas according to the city block number, and we don't know where the new road names are located.
Under the new address system, which took effect nationwide at the start of the new year, the city block number, or land lot number, which was assigned according to when the land was purchased, has been replaced by a sequential building number. Now all the road names and building numbers are assigned in order. beginning from where the street starts to where it ends. Odd numbers on the left and even numbers on the right. This new address system, used in most developed countries, now replaces the old system that Korea has been using for the past century.
We expected it wouldn't be easy, changing a 100-year-old system overnight. But we did spend a few years preparing institutions and residents for the change. We even handed out new maps for different businesses. We'll continue with the promotion efforts this year and spend about $1.3 million on it.
Mail carrier Shin Bom is not running into any issues making his deliveries today. Shin, who's been in the job for the past 15 years, is familiar with these roads, but their actual names are things he's had to learn recently.
At first, it was very difficult learning the new road names and getting used to the new address system. But for the past 2 years, Korea Post has been training us to learn the new addresses, and it's made us to take tests.
The Korea Post says only about 19% of all mail coming in uses the new address system, but the old format is not causing any problems. Automated machines recognize both the old and new address formats, ensuring that every piece of mail is delivered properly and on time. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the latest update on Yoon Sung-min's quest for the major leagues. Now, after all the waiting, the Office of the Major League Baseball has requested the KBO information on the righty. Now, in what is the first process before a team signs a player from overseas, the KBO has received a request for information on Yoon Sung-min on Tuesday. With that, Yoon, who's scheduled to leave to the United States later today, might be able to finally sign with a major league team. Although the KBO doesn't know which team has asked for the information, it's still good news as Yoon Sung-min hopes to become the second KBO player to move over to the majors. And staying with baseball, after another meeting amongst the general managers of the 10 KBO teams, they finally decided to eliminate the salary cap on foreign players in the league. While previous KBO rules stated that a foreign player is not allowed to get paid more than $300,000 per season, that salary cap is no longer valid starting this season. Although many believe that some of the foreign players were secretly getting paid more, it's become a huge issue this past offseason when former major leaguers like Luke Scott was set to be signed for $300,000. What was once called the worst-kept secret in the KBO will not matter anymore. And moving on to some Tuesday night's KBL action, we had one game that took place last night as the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus took on Wonju Dongbu Promi. And jumping right into the action, first quarter, Mobis off to a great start, take a comfortable 24-17 lead before Dongbu answers back in the second quarter thanks to Lee Sung-jun and Keith Randleman as they rally back to take a 43-39 lead going into halftime. But the third quarter of the game, the former Dongbu big man Rod Benson tears it up with 15 points as Mobis outscores Dongbu 30-16 in the third. Benson would finish off the game with 25 points and 10 rebounds as Mobis hangs on to take this game 92-79, your final score. And finishing things off with some V-League action from last night, GS Caltex defeated Daejeon KGC despite Joyce Gomez da Silva putting up 41 points for KGC over in the Women's League. Meanwhile, a big matchup between Samsung Blue Fangs and Uricard over the Men's League. So let's take a look at the highlights. Now, first set, the Blue Fangs off to a great start as they easily take the first set 25-20. But Uricard answers back with some great blocking game in the second set as they take the set 25-19. But it was the Blue Fangs all the way from there on, taking the next two sets 25-20 and 25-23, thanks to Leo Martinez lighting it up with 47 points on the night as Samsung Blue Fangs take this match 3-1. And that wraps it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
And time now to check the weather in Korea and around the world. And that's all for now. Have a fantastic rest of the day. We'll be back again at noon, Korea time.